Hi, and welcome to this first video. Now this video is not an attempt to repeat the content of the lecture. In the lecture you had all the various things about strings. What we're going to look at is how you manipulate them and some of the clever things and see it demonstrated, and you can try this on. Some of the basic operations you need to know is how you print. And there are some very clever things that Python allows you to do, and also strange things. Think about the multiplication sign. So let's start in a very simple place. Let's just do a simple print statement. If you've done one before, I'll put it all lowercase. Right, hello world, save your file and execute that file. Please note I'm not running this from the console. So on my environment you can just run the file and it will execute that line, okay? It hasn't got any defs or functions or anything like that. So what it does is it just prints that line. That's the most basic thing to do. Now, strings get interesting the moment you store them and manipulate them. So let's store our string in a variable called s, and let's store hello and welcome to this online course. Okay, there's a typo in there. Okay, so let's just take a very simple statement, and we'll get rid of that now that we've done it. That's a string. Now what's very clever, I said in the intro we wanted to look at what was clever. What's clever about Python is that if you press S and you say what can I do to that sentence, that line, that string, and hit dot, you will notice it has a whole range of functions. We will go through some of it. Capitalize, I think that capitalizes the first letter. We can test it out. You can test it. I'll show you how to use it. Format, which is a little trickier. We'll come to that in a little bit more time. You have something called upper, which changes everything to capitals. That's quite a nice place to start. If you do that and you put it inside a print statement, which means put it on the screen in the console, let's have a look at what it does. See what that does. There we go, look at that, it's all capital. Let's say that you ask this string to capitalize itself. Okay, what will that do? Now notice all of this is lowercase, that's an H, normal H. So what does capitalize do? Let's run it. Capitalizes the first letter. There are all kinds of other more complex operations which I'm not going to go into in this first video. What I want you to understand is just some basic manipulation concepts. Right, let's have a look at some other nice, clever little... let's have another string. Let's call it S1. And let's say, comma, now get on with your study. Or actually that's a little bit, let's say, now get on with your study. That'll do, right? So we have two sentences, S1 and S2. This is quite clever, and you might not appreciate how clever it is. I can print each of them, right? So I can print the first, and print the second. What do you expect to happen if I do that? You expect the two lines to happen one underneath the other. Let's have a look. Hello and welcome, and there's the second one underneath. I can also stick them on the same line, glue them together. I can do that. Now that is incredibly powerful. It's easy to assume, look at that, hello and welcome to this online, now get on with your study. It's glued them together. Now that simple plus sign for you is a very straightforward thing to do once you see it, right? You can even add in another plus sign. Let's put it in the right place. And you can add in some more string, blah, blah, right? Right, and then run that. Let's do that. Put a little space there. Run that and see what that looks like. And there at the end it sticks blah, blah. Okay, so why is it so important? Well, the very clever thing that Python does is it looks at the data and it works out that actually you've got some data there. If I just wrote here data, right, or I wrote here, actually what would be better is variable 1, because that's technically what we're doing, and variable 2, right? Because that's essentially where we're storing our stuff, right? And I glue them together, variable 1 and variable 2. It's a bit long-winded, but see if you can follow me, what I'm trying to get at here. Then ran that, okay, and it just glues the two strings together. Because what it's done is it knows, after looking at the data you're trying to store, that you're dealing with a string. So when it comes to this type of action where there's a plus sign, it doesn't treat them as numbers, it glues them together. The gluing together, let's get that word back up, the gluing together is called concatenating. It's a technical word, but essentially it glues string together. Okay, now look at this version. Let's say that instead of the hello, let's get rid of that. Actually, the easiest way instead of deleting stuff is just put a hash in front of it, which turns it invisible for the code, and put the number instead. You notice the number is blue. Let's put 34 there and put a hash so the rest of the line is ignored. Okay, now the print statement here, again, no change there, and there's a plus sign here. So what do you expect to happen here? Hold your thoughts. It's given me 79. Why is it given me 79? It's because it's detected that here there are no speech marks and it's therefore a number. So it's treating variable 1 as a number. Now, that's really, really quite clever. And then it glues it together. Look what happens if I put speech marks around it. Right, let's do the same thing for the 34. Right. Will it realize I've got two pieces of string? It does indeed. It treats them as a string, 45, 34. Now I linger on this and I want to pay attention to this because it's very, very useful to understand that Python, unlike other programming languages, cleverly does a lot of work when you're not paying attention. Look at variable 1. If I put the dot sign and see what's available to me, these functions here aren't upper, split, and so on. They're completely different. So you see the tools that it makes available are reflected by the type of data we have here. So that's a really, really important insight. And if you want to make that absolutely clear, let's make 1 a number and 1 a letter and just compare. So variable 1 is a piece of string. Variable 2 is a number. Let's get rid of that print statement. What I would recommend is you do play around with this a little bit. So if we print and we use this word, the type, and we say to it, what type of data are you? Variable 1. And then we say, and run it, what will it say? Let's have a look. It tells me the type is a string. If I say the same thing, variable 2, and run it, it will tell me it's an int. An int is a whole number. Watch this, if I add a fractional part into here and run that again, it will tell me it's a float. A float deals with fractions. So it's very clever in working out what type of data you have. There are problems that come with this, but don't take this for granted. We'll stop in a second. When you're manipulating strings, don't take for granted how this works, because where it gets tricky, and the very last thought, which a question I want to leave with you, is what happens if you want to stick variable 1, right, variable 1, and you want to glue it to variable 2, right, but 1's a number and 1's a string. So look, we've got a number up there. We'll give a sensible example in the next video. Oh, it doesn't like it. It has what's called a type error. I cannot concatenate, i.e. I cannot glue a string and a float together. Now this is what we'll pick up in the second video and talk about how do you combine numbers and strings in sensible ways, because it's a very common and important set of procedures.